Hi, this is Keith Williams. Welcome to 5 Watt World, where we're interested in helping you get the most music from the least gear.
I have sort of a fantasy about if you could just pare it down to one or two electrics and one or two acoustics and one or two amps.
This is a question that's been on my mind ever since I started playing guitar. The question is, how many guitars do you need?
Well, I did it. Keith over at 5 Watt World inspired me with his video about how many guitars you actually need, and I'm down to one now. If one guitar is good enough for all those guys, then it's surely good enough for me. And I thought while I was at it, I might as well clear out a bunch of studio gear. Things like my big computer, my interface, I don't know, I don't think I really need all that stuff to do what I want to do. So welcome to the new studio. The back room is now for the dogs, and I'm just working at my kitchen table here. All I need is my laptop, and I kept one guitar, the PRS Silver Sky, which isn't even my guitar. This is on loan, and I guess hopefully for a while longer because it's all I've got. Anyways, let's plug it in and see what happens. Oh, crap. Okay, so I didn't sell all my gear. Actually, I've sold exactly no gear in the last little while, but I think this is a topic I really want to discuss. This is something that I've spent a lot of time thinking about over the years, and in particular more recently since coming across Keith's channel, 5 Watt World, and watching his video, How Many Guitars Do You Actually Need? I've really thought a lot about this. Even prior to that, I think I've been pretty mindful about the gear that I bring in, mostly from a cost perspective or a space perspective. I don't have a ton of space in my studio or in the house here, and we kind of did that on purpose. And also just as a gigging musician, in general, I can't really take a ton of gear with me anyways, because we're in a van, we're crammed, or we're flying, and generally when I'm flying, the idea is to take as little as possible with me to do my job well. I think that has spilled over into my life here in the studio. I try and have as little gear as I can within reason. Obviously, I want to be able to do my job to the highest quality, and I want to have a really good workflow. I don't want to get stuck, having to spend a bunch of time retuning a guitar to a different tuning or something when I could just have one dedicated to that. And we're going to talk about that today. I want to talk about the gear I choose to keep and what I think is the perfect number of guitars for me. Now, obviously, this is going to be different for everybody. I don't know what your situation is. Maybe you need more guitars than me. Maybe you need less guitars than me. It's going to be different for everybody. I think it's totally worth evaluating though. If you're not familiar with Keith's channel, do yourself a favor, go check it out. It's 5 Watt World. I'm going to link 2 videos in particular down in the description below. One is his original How Many Guitars Do You Actually Need video, and the other one's a stream he did a couple of weeks ago, which kind of just lit a fire under my butt to come on and do this video here in particular. He brought up a couple of really cool points, some methodologies or ideologies from different people that have influenced his choice of what gear to keep around. The first is Marie Kondo and her book, The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up. Her philosophy or ideology is that you only hold on to the things that bring you joy. He also talked about this idea that Tim Ferriss brings up in his book, The 4-Hour Work Week. It's an experiment called the $100 million experiment, where basically tomorrow morning you wake up with $100 million in your bank. What do you do? Do you keep living your life the way you are? How would you change things? So essentially, like, if money wasn't a factor, what would you be doing day to day? What would your ideal life look like? Now, I think this is something I've done pretty well intentionally for a really long time. I've definitely made a lot of decisions about my career and my life based around overall happiness and my desires as opposed to money. I think most of us who go into music or another field that's not so guaranteed, there's no guarantee you're going to be able to make it or make a decent living in it. I think a lot of us choose to prioritize our lifestyle and our desires over money. I still think it's a really great exercise. What would you do tomorrow if you woke up with $100 million in your bank? What would your life look like? What if we take this idea and apply it specifically just to the guitars we own? If you could be making music in the exact way you desire, be it live or recording, teaching, I don't know, whatever it might look like for you, how many guitars do you need? Okay, so let's say I just woke up with $100 million in my bank this morning. What's my life look like? What do I choose to continue in my musical world? I still really like the idea of having a smaller studio. I don't really have much desire to have a massive studio with all kinds of gear and be tracking full bands or anything like that. I want to have a studio where I can work with singer-songwriters to develop their ideas. We can record guitars here, vocals here, bass here, and do some basic computer programming. I don't have the desire to be dealing with drums or full bands, so I don't really need much of a bigger studio. I love doing session work, and in particular, I love playing acoustic guitar on records. It's something I've nerded out a lot about in the last year, so that's something I definitely need to factor into how many guitars I need, is the fact that I want to be doing lots of acoustic session work. I also want to continue gigging live with various bands or different projects. So, I need to have some electric guitars for that as well as for recording, but I definitely don't need a whole ton of them. Why don't we take a look at my current guitar situation, and then we can talk about what should stay and what should go, and if maybe I would desire to have any additions on top of what I already have. Currently, I just have the two acoustic guitars, as you saw, the 0015 from Martin and the Stonebridge D22 SR. And if we're being totally honest, in a perfect world, I think I actually want one more. Now, this video wasn't supposed to inspire me to want to buy more guitars, but in an ideal world, I think I'd want 3 acoustics. I want to have one in standard tuning all the time. I want to have one in a drop tuning. Right now, I'm kind of thinking I probably want something a whole step down. That way, if I get something that's in the key of F, say, I can play G shapes, and then I also have the opportunity to capo one and access some different open chord positions in like a half step down, and then all the different capo positions up the neck of the standard guitar would allow me access to a lot of different voicings I like to use. I think that's really important, so I'm not having to retune a guitar, especially if you're going to maybe drop it a whole step. It might get kind of slinky and not sound the best recorded. You're probably going to get some buzzes. On top of that, I definitely think I want to have a high-strung Nashville tuning guitar around here, just for adding in some extra parts. I've been getting away without it and just using a capo high up the neck to simulate some of those sounds. However, I think it would probably open up some more creative possibilities. I don't generally play in open tunings very much, and if I do, I just, tune the acoustic to it in the moment, and so far that hasn't been a problem. So I want 3 acoustic guitars for sure. Things were a little more complicated in the electric department because I have some stuff on loan right now. In reality, I have 5 electrics right now that I own. I have my Nash S63 Strat, I've got the Tele, I've got the Greco Les Paul, I've got the Yamaha Revstar, and I've got the Gibson ES339. I think that's one too many. I've really spent a lot of time thinking about how many electrics I need, and truly I think 4 is the right answer. I want to kind of have one of every flavor. So I want to have a Strat sound, I want to have a Tele sound, I want to have a Gibson sound, and some sort of a Gretsch-like sound with a Bixby, something that's a little bit better for more of the ambient stuff. And the Bixby is a really nice flavor to have for recording. Something I've noticed as I've accumulated more guitars is that they're harder and harder to maintain. There are a lot of times where I'll go and I'll grab a guitar off the wall, I'll pull it down, and the strings will be dead, or the frets will be a bit sharp, or it'll need like a setup. For a long time, I just had 2 electrics and 1 acoustic, and my guitars have never been more immaculately set up in my entire life because that's all I had to maintain. It was super, super easy. It was really affordable. Now I'm having to take a whole bunch more guitars into the repair guy, on a regular basis. I try and get them in at least twice a year each, although I've definitely not been doing that since I've accumulated more. The guitars I tend to play more tend to be the ones that get the most love. They're in the best shape, and I just gravitate towards them more naturally. Yeah, I think you could argue that, a Les Paul sounds different than an ES339, that's for sure. But, just having that humbucker sound so that if a producer or someone that I'm working with on a record says, yeah, can you give me more of a humbucker or a Gibson sound, I have the option, right? So we've kind of got the Fender sounds, the Gibson sounds, and the Gretsch sounds. Something else worth talking about is traveling with my guitars. I actually intentionally purchased a 339 instead of a 335 and went for the Revstar instead of a Gretsch hollow body because they both fit in my mono double bag. That means I can take either of them to a gig in combination with one of my other guitars and not have to carry a separate case. That's something that's actually really, really important to me. I want to travel as light as possible. I want to check as little gear as possible. And although, I don't have the real thing with the 335 or the Gretsch, it gets close enough. And, I haven't noticed a difference either in recording or in live situations. And I'm really happy with that decision. So what about alternate tunings or drop tunings for the electric? That's something that is definitely worth talking about. So I don't play a lot in open tunings, and actually currently all my guitars are just tuned to standard. I don't even have one and half step down right now, which is something that I used to do because the technology is so good now that I don't know if we even really need it. I use a Digitech drop pedal currently. If you're a purist and you're cringing right now thinking about that, I would challenge you to check it out. I got the pedal first for live work when I needed to do a gig that had 4 or 5 different kinds of drop tunings, and we couldn't take 5 or 6 guitars with us. And I started using it in the studio a little bit, and it even gets down into baritone territory. That's a guitar I'd love to have, but I've definitely gotten away using the Digitech drop and any of my other guitars to make it sound like a baritone. Is it exactly the same? Maybe not. But in the context of a mix, I've never been able to tell, and I've never had any complaints about it from clients. So I actually had a really affirming experience with the drop pedal about 1.5 years ago. We went to the States with an artist to play a gig where his producer was going to be there. And it's a pretty heavy record, way outside of my comfort zone. And there's stuff down as low as drop A, or maybe drop A flat, and kind of like everywhere in between. So obviously I couldn't take that many guitars with me, nor do I have guitars that are set up to go that low. That's why I bought the drop pedal. So playing for the guy who created all of these sounds was kind of nerve-wracking considering we were faking it. And I'll never forget, after the gig we kind of got to chatting. I was playing my ES339 and he said to me like, "Man, where did you get that Gibson baritone? I've never seen such a thing. That's so cool." So the fact that it got by him, that we were digitally dropping the sound, was a huge affirmation, revelation, whatever you want to call it, for me anyways, that this technology is that good. And it's just going to keep getting better. I still find myself sometimes being hesitant about using it in the studio, thinking that, it's going to be a dead giveaway in a more clear recording like that, although that has never been the case. So I'm a huge fan of that. I think that, for me at least, allows me to have less guitars, take better care of them, and still put out the same quality of work and have a fantastic workflow. I think this is something I'm going to try and live by for the next little bit on the records that I'm doing here on the channel and with my live gigs. I'm just going to pick 4 electric guitars and stick to only using those for the next few months and see how it goes. If I had to at the moment, the one guitar I would get rid of would be the Greco Jeff Beck Les Paul. I just tend to like the 339 a little bit better, and it's the one that gets played the least. In fact, over the course of the last year, I think I've had it lent out to different friends and students more than I've had it here at home. The reason I find myself keeping it is because it's a cool old guitar and I just really like it. I think that's another challenge completely, is the fact that guitars hold sentimental value. I look at that guitar and I remember how I got it. I remember the trip down to get it. It brings back a lot of really good memories for me, and I find I really struggle to part with it because of that. One strategy for combating this is to have a picture of it, so that when you look at the picture, you can remember the fond memories or whatever it is that you have attached to it. I'm gonna be honest with you, I'm still not there. I like the tactile feeling. I like picking it up. I like holding it. I like playing it, looking at it in front of me, all of those different things. And so that's something I'm going to need to work on. But for now, I'm going to put it away. Maybe I'll lend it out again to someone just so that, I've still got it, but it's not here. And I'll see how that goes. What about you guys? I would love to hear down below in the comments what you guys think about this. How many guitars do you currently have? Does it fit your ideal musical lifestyle or like your perfect musical day? Would you have more? Would you have less? What are some of your experiences with having an overabundance of gear? Have you found that it's ever impeded your workflow or your creativity? Those are the kinds of questions that I think are really important when we're talking about these subjects and the idea of minimalism. Some people laugh at me when I claim to be a minimalist, because I have more than one guitar and I have, a little box full of pedals and things like that. However, I definitely really try to bring in the things that make my life better, that make me better at my job, and not more than I need. Also, you have to remember it's a work in progress. You're not just going to go from having everything to nothing all at once. I know some people do. I know we romanticize this idea a lot, but I don't think it's practical. It's definitely something that I think we should all work towards, or if it's something you want to work towards, you will. Start taking small steps to do it now and see how you feel. If it makes your life better, great. If not, that's fine too. So I think that about wraps it up here for today. As always, I want to just take a minute and thank you guys for your time and your attention in such a noisy world, especially if you've made it all the way through the video. I know that time is one of our most valuable assets. If you haven't yet, please consider subscribing to the channel, ring the bell, like the video, and interact in the comments down below. It would mean the world to me. Until next time, guys, I hope you get out there and you can make some music.